Hello everyone, I am Prince Mishra, and in this series of important geographical theories of geography optional, in this session we will cover one of the most important theories related to the population. Regularly questions are being asked from this area, and it is having large scale socio-economic ramification in the entire geography optional, that is both paper 1 as well as paper 2. As far as syllabus is concerned, so as part of the syllabus we have a theory of Malthus, theory of Karl Marx, and also demographic transition theory, more popularly referred as DTT theory. So these are three main theories that are supposed to be studied in the geography optional. Other than these three theories, you are also supposed to study one more concept, that is optimum population. These are the important concepts that you are supposed to study. Now the questions that are being asked will be directly asked from these topics. So the chapter 10 of paper 1, which is associated with the models, laws and theories in human geography. So from that chapter you will get direct question. But the question related to these theories are also being asked in chapter of population and settlement. Chapter of population and settlement. That is chapter number 8 of paper 1. In fact, in paper 2, we have a chapter of cultural setting. So as far as syllabus is concerned, models and theories only have these topics, but the ramification of these topics are associated with the three important chapters of the syllabus. Other than these three chapters, in fact, any of the economic development, regional planning, agricultural discussion, industrial development cannot be think of without considering the important aspect of the population, because everything is for the people, and if it is for the people, so it is also important to understand that how the population is being distributed, why some of the areas population is continuously increasing whereas some of the areas population is not increasing at all. So within that backdrop, this chapter is going to be very important, and these are the theories that you are supposed to be studying. So we will cover one by one all these theories of the geography optional related to the population. So let's start with the first theory of population, that is Malthusian theory of population. Now, one interesting information. In the geography optional, these theories have been written explicitly. But in fact, in some other areas of the GS, the knowledge of these theories are going to be very much beneficial, like your social issues. So in GS paper 1, the knowledge of these concepts will also be helpful for the social issues. So the topics of the social issues will become more clear when you will have an understanding of these topics, these theories. तो ये theories ऐसा नहीं है कि these are going to be associated with the geography option. In fact, it is going to be helpful for the GS topics also. Now, Robert Malthus was an British economist and historian. And he has propagated his idea, his concept in 1798. So in 1798, he has propagated his idea related to the population. He is regarded the pioneer in this field of the population demography, because before Malthus, there have been different proponents who has talked about the population or the demography, because earlier population was being considered as a part of the economy only. It was the Trevartha who is considered to have given this topic orientation, and in fact later on, because of his effort only, it has been included as one of the important topic chapters of the geography discipline. तो geography discipline में जो include किया गया population को as a demography, so that is being with the effort of the Trevartha and other scholars. But they have only tried to help out this discipline, this demography, that what are the different elements, what are the different attributes. When it comes to the theorization of the concept, presenting a theory, a model, so the credit goes to the Robert Malthus. What was the idea, or what was the interesting about the Robert Malthus? Try to understand. He was writing in that time period when already the industrialization has taken place in the Europe. Because of the industrialization, suddenly the Malthus have witnessed there has been a sudden rise of the population. So the increasing population was very important concern for the Robert Malthus. तो उनका जो मेन कंसर्न था वो ये था कि जो पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ है, ये पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ इसी तरीके से आगे होगी, और if the population growth will continue to happen in this manner, so what will happen in the future? So it is a kind of predictive model. He was just trying to predict that what is going to happen. How he is predicting? He is predicting based on some of the ideas, some of the data that he was having, but those data was associated with the developed countries, developed region. So based on the developed data, developed countries population, he is trying to come out with a concept, with a theory. Now, what was the objective of his population theory? So if you will start looking out the main objective from the perspective, the Malthus was trying to come out with the idea theory. He wanted to establish a relationship. So he wanted to establish a relationship between population growth and human welfare. Population growth and human welfare. So he was trying to study the population growth. He was trying to predict about the population growth. But this population growth not in isolation. This population growth within the backdrop of human welfare. So his whole idea was associated with this, that how the society will get benefited. Whether the society is going to get benefited or there will be some of the negative impact of this. So his whole idea of that only. तो पूरा का पूरा जो उनका आइडिया था वो एक तरीके से पॉपुलेशन को रिलेट कर रहे थे. पॉपुलेशन ज्यादा हुई तो क्या होगा, अगर पॉपुलेशन का ग्रोथ इसी तरीके से रहा तो व्हाट इज गोइंग टू हैपन इन द फ्यूचर. After going through with the theory, you will also get to know that before presenting the model, Malthus was very much pessimistic about the population growth. तो यहां पे हम कह सकते हैं कि Malthus was not very rational. जैसे बाकी जो हमारी ह्यूमन इकोनॉमिक ज्योग्राफी की लोकेशनल थ्योरीज हैं, वहां पे देखेंगे कि मोस्ट ऑफ द थ्योरिस्ट हैव कंसीडर्ड दैट ह्यूमंस हैपेंस टू बी द इकोनॉमिक रैशनल मैन. बट व्हेन यू विल स्टार्ट एनालाइजिंग द Malthus, then we'll find Malthus was very much pessimistic. And in fact, before writing itself, he has decided that what will be the outcome. ये उसी तरीके से होगा, ये उसी तरीके से है कि let's suppose that you are preparing for the UPSC and before the examination, before your preparation, somebody is having a judgment कि ठीक है आप ये करेंगे आपका सिलेक्शन नहीं होगा, आपने कहा नहीं ठीक है अगर हम ये कर लेंगे तो फिर सिलेक्शन हो जाएगा, तो then again he has suggested no, if you will do this then there will be some other problem, then again you will not get qualified. So means already the decision has been made by the Malthus that whatever the people will do, because of this population growth, the trend that we are witnessing, this trend of the population growth ultimately going to have negative impact of the society, and in fact society will collapse. That was the crux, that was the summary of his idea of the population growth. Okay, so within this backdrop, he has presented the model. Now, to present his model, Robert Malthus have considered that there are two basic, you can say, premise. So there are two assumptions of his theory, and these are assumptions as well as these are necessity also. So what are the two important assumptions identified by the Robert Malthus? So Robert Malthus have considered food is important for human survival. Food is necessary for the human survival. The second, so he is talking about the food resource. The second is there will be passion between opposite sex. So there will be a passion between opposite sex, means there will be a passion of population growth. In fact, within this premise, what he suggested, because the peoples are very much attracted, and in fact, what he suggested that passion between opposite sex existed and it will remain same. So that is also important thing. Means he is suggesting that whatever is existing today will also remain same in the future. So whatever is happening, whatever is existing today will also remain in the future. So passion between opposite sexes and it will remain same. Now what he is suggesting that because it will remain same, that is why population grows geometrically. Because there exists passion between the sexes, and because of that the population will continue to grow, and this population growth will be geometrically. Whereas food is important for the human survival, but the growth of food resources grows arithmetically. So there will be a geometric growth of what? Population. And there will be arithmetic growth of what? Arithmetic growth of the food resources. That was the basic premise on which Malthus have constructed his whole idea, his whole concept. तो पूरा का पूरा जो concept है Malthus का, that remains on this basic premise कि आपका जो food resource होगा, it will grow, it will witness food resource will witness arithmetic growth. What is this arithmetic growth? Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this manner. Whereas population जो होगी आपकी, it will witness geometric growth. Geometric growth means 2, 4, 8, 16, 32 in this manner. Now when the food resources grows arithmetically and the population will grow geometrically, over the period of time, there will be some mismatch between the availability of the food and the demand of the food. इसी तरीके से समझिए इसको, सिंपल लैंग्वेज में अगर आप समझे, जैसे लेट सपोज आपकी फैमिली है और अगर आपकी फैमिली में यू रिक्वायर 20 kg of food grain, you require 20 kg of the food grain and your family is of 5. तो अगर हम क्रूड लैंग्वेज में बात करें, बिकॉज everyone's we need to look out that what is the median age, because the demand of the newborn will be different in comparison to the adults. तो adult newborn की अलग अलग रहेगी, बट क्रूड फॉर्म में अगर हम देखें तो लेट सपोज दैट 20 kg ऑफ द फूड इज रिक्वायर्ड फॉर 5 पीपल. अब अगर ये 5 से 10 हो गए, तो 5 से 10 हो गए तो ऑब्वियसली इट शुड इंक्रीज टू 20 to 40, लेकिन समझिए कि 30 हो गया. अब 10 people are depending on the 30 kg of the food. Definitely there is some deficit, but still it can be managed. But then the number of people become 20. So if the 20 people are there, so obviously they require more quantity of food, but your food is like 40. So 5 people were surviving on 20 kg of the food. तो अगर आपके 20 पीपल हो गए, 20 फैमिली मेंबर हो गए, तो डेफिनेटली दे रिक्वायर 80 kg ऑफ द फूड, और आपका फूड कितना है, ओनली 40 kg. सो बिकॉज ऑफ दिस शॉर्टेज ऑफ द फूड, देयर विल बी सम ऑफ द प्रॉब्लम्स. सो व्हेन द फूड रिसोर्सेज विल ग्रो अरिथमेटिकली in comparison to the geometric growth of the population, there will be some of the problems. There will be a food shortage. Whenever the food shortage will happen, so people will react. So he suggested that the people will react. How they will react? They will understand that yes, population is growing very rapidly. We need to devise some of the methodology to tackle this population growth. So Malthus have predicted that food resources will grow arithmetically, population will grow geometrically. Over the period of time, there will be a gap and there will be a shortage of the food. To respond to this shortage, the people will go for the preventive checks. So he talks about that when there will be a gap, when there will be a shortage, to respond to this shortage, what will happen? People will go for the preventive checks. Now, what are the preventive checks? Preventive checks like delayed marriage, moral restraint or absent from sex. So moral restraint, delayed marriage, celibacy. So these were some of the methodology that has been devised, that has been suggested by the Malthus. And definitely it will give some of the results. So population will start declining or population will get controlled. But over the period of time, what will happen? Over the period of time, when the preventive checks will give some result, as the preventive checks have given some result, people will become comfortable. People will think that the problem has sorted out. And when the people will think that the problem has sorted out, out, then again the population will start growing rapidly, and this population grows rapidly and the food resources availability growing slowly will again create the mismatch, and now this mismatch will become to the almost, you can say, critical point, critical limit, and beyond this critical limit there will be a positive checks. Now the positive checks, one very interesting thing, positive checks is being applied by the nature. Preventive checks has been applied by the humans. But when the population will continue to grow and there is no scope of improvement, so what will happen? Then comes the positive checks. Positive checks is being applied by the nature. Now nature, when it will apply, so what are the some of the positive checks? War, pestilence, flood, drought, famine. So there has been a different positive checks have been suggested by the Malthus. Now, if we look out from this first, let's try to understand and do some analysis here itself. Malthus is suggesting that the food resources will grow arithmetically, whereas the population will grow geometrically. Because of this, there will be some gap, some shortage of the food. To check the shortage of the food, preventive checks will be applied. Now, in this preventive checks, he talks about the delayed marriage. Now, what is this rationality or what is this effect of the delayed marriage? Try to understand. Delayed marriage that Malthus have suggested is not incorrect. In fact, till today you will find that it is having some of the effect. So even till today you will find there is some effect of the delayed marriage. Like in our society, most of the area where there is a higher level of development, specifically the urban areas. So in urban areas specifically, even in India also you will find that the people are marrying both the girl and boys at very late age. When the people are marrying at the very late age, like 30, 32, 35, then already the chances of having babies will decreases. The fertile period, of course, the biologically, the fertile period, demographically हम लोग use करते हैं term fecundity period. Is around 15 to 49. This is the fertile period. But within this 15 to 49, the fertility is very higher in the lower age group, that is 15 to 25. So 15 to 25, the fertility is going to be very high. And if someone is marrying, if the females are getting married at the after the age of 25, already their fertility is gone down almost more than 50%. So obviously there will be check of the population. Now, it is very surprising to see that once the Malthus is suggesting that the people will go for the delayed marriage. Delayed marriage is something that is a societal aspect. And in society, customs and some of the other things is not being based on immediate effect. So it is not like knee-jerk reaction. If something is prevalent in the society, it is not going to get changed very easily. So either you can say कि जो मालथूस ने सोचा कि डिलेड मैरिज होगी, ऐसा हुआ नहीं, या तो ये पॉइंट है। और दूसरा पॉइंट, अगर एक बार डिलेड मैरिज आपकी स्टार्ट हो गई सोसाइटी में, एवरीवन वाज गोइंग फॉर द डिलेड मैरिज, सो हाउ कम इमीडिएटली पीपल विल गो फॉर द बैक? इट इज नॉट लाइक दैट पीपल हैव वंस accustomed to go for the delayed marriage, population आपकी स्टेबल हो गई और population स्टेबल हो गई, फिर suddenly people has started going for the early marriages and more number of babies. So Malthus have contradicted himself. But anyway, we need to understand, as I said, that the Malthus were very much, he was like a kind of theorist who has already decided that what should be the end. तो जो मूवी बना रहे हैं उस मूवी का जो एंड है वो पहले से डिसाइडेड है। अब बीच में जो भी कुछ हो जाए whatever will happen in the middle is not going to affect the end. End is same. End is going to be remain same. तो कुछ इसी तरीके से मॉडल प्रेजेंट किया माल्थूस ने, और ये जो माल्थूस का मॉडल है उसमें अल्टीमेटली ही वाज जस्ट ट्राइंग टू पोर्ट्रे दैट पॉपुलेशन इज नेगेटिव. So he wanted to portray that the population is negative. So he tried to convince the world that the population is not good. And if the population is not good, so obviously countries, the people needs to take care of this population rise. We will do his critical analysis, but again, just try to have a quick understanding of what was the idea of the Malthus. So Malthus have presented a model of population, and this model is simply looking out the relationship between the population growth and the human welfare. So he suggested that the society population is growing rapidly, and in fact in the geometrical progression, and because of the geometrical progression, what will happen over the period of time as food resources are growing arithmetically, so over the period of time a gap of the food, a shortage of the food will prevail, and when the shortage of the food will prevail, so people will start devising some methodology to tackle this shortage or tackle this sudden rise of the population. So people will go for the preventive checks. People will go, but the preventive checks immediately in short run will start giving the result. But when the result will start coming, people will become lazy or people will become careless, and as the people will become lazy or careless, again the population will start growing rapidly, that is in geometrical progression, and over the period of time this gap will again become very much unviable, and there comes the positive checks. So positive checks are like nature induced. So positive checks are like nature induced, whereas preventive checks are, these are human or man induced. So preventive checks humans induce, positive checks these are the nature induced. So this was his idea, and in fact this became a very important concept. Of course, over the period of time his concept, his theory have been completely rejected. तो जो माल्थूस का आइडिया है, जो माल्थूस की थ्योरी है, वो पूरी तरीके से रिजेक्ट कर दी गई बाद में. But we will look out that whether it is relevant in today's time period or not, or what are the some of the major criticism. अब देखते हैं कि इसका मेजर क्रिटिसिज्म क्या है. Now the very first thing that the Malthus have missed is he hasn't considered the role of technological advancement in agriculture. So the very first thing that he has missed, because already the industrial revolution was happening. So industrial revolution was happening, so it was quite obvious that industries will produce some of the large scale machineries, and these large scale machineries will be utilized in the agriculture in the field, and with the utilization obviously there is a chances that the agriculture productivity will increase. The classical example is from the India. In the 1960s, India reached to that critical point where it is being said that India was having only few weeks food grain left. So India was going to that crisis, but then the India has started an initiative, a program, that is the Green Revolution. So Green Revolution have been initiated, and through the initiation of the Green Revolution, the country that was earlier to be considered as the begging bowl, so the country that has been tagged in the worldwide as a begging bowl, now what is happening? Now that particular country within the next 15 years has transformed itself to the one of the biggest contributor to the United Nations peacekeeping mission. No, so we not only have become a self-sufficient in the food grain, but also we are contributing heavily. So this is one of the thing that has been almost not thought by the Malthus, or he failed to analyze this, that agricultural development, agriculture advancement can almost reverse this, because you are thinking that food grain will only grow arithmetically. So food grain can also grow geometrically. So that was one of the important drawback. Then the second criticism, which is also very important to understand, he has ignored the biological instinct of the human and, or you can say biological versus so the second premise, the second assumption, that the passion between sexes, that is the biological instinct, but having the babies is a social instinct. So he has completely missed that aspect. How can you are comparing this social instinct with the biological instinct? So there he has been not very much correct. Then the another assessment that has gone wrong, he has considered that when the children are coming in this world, they are only coming in this world with the belly. So he has completely ignored the human resource part, because when there is a birth of kid, so the birth of kid doesn't mean that it is only going to have a burden on the earth surface, burden in that particular community or in country. It is also having a great potential. So there is a great potential. So from that perspective also, so human resource potential have been ignored. So human resource potential have been particularly completely ignored. Then when you will look out the Malthus was writing in later part of the 18th century. But in later part of the 18th century, in Europe, there was a prevalence of contraceptives, family planning. So contraceptives and family planning were prevalent, but still what Malthus is doing? Malthus is ignoring that. So he has ignored that. And why he has ignored that again? If we'll start looking out that why he has ignored that. So he has ignored that simply because he already has decided that what is going to have the end. So end was very much decided, that end is like we need to portray the population as a negative thing, pessimistic. Then when we will start looking out the positive checks, what are the positive checks? Positive checks, war. War is not because of the population. In fact, in present time period, if you will start looking out that the clash between the Iran and Israel, or the clash between the Russia and Ukraine, do you think that it is simply because of the population? That population growth is very rapid and because of that countries are going for the war? Or natural hazards? Do you think that the natural hazards are associated with the population? Natural hazards are associated with some of the natural phenomena. It doesn't mean that the country where the population is optimum is not going to witness the earthquake, volcano. Other hazards can occur, natural hazards can occur. In fact, in most of the Europe, there is a large scale forest fire, heat waves, cold waves. So positive checks that has been suggested by the Malthus is not very much relevant, or it is not appears to be very much connected that these positive checks are being caused by the high population. So natural hazards are not associated with the population growth. Also war has nothing to do with population growth. So these are some of the criticism associated with the Malthus. Now in the end, because we are doing the critical analysis, so it becomes also very much important to understand that does it mean that Malthus is completely irrelevant in the present time period, or what is the relevancy of the Malthus in the present time period? Now when you will start looking out the utility or relevancy of the Malthus in present time period, so overall Malthus is incorrect. His idea has been rejected. So criticism तो हमने देख ही लिया, criticism में आपको कोई बड़ी problem नहीं होगी. So you can handle the criticism part. Now next is, other than the criticism, there are some good points also. What are some of the good points, or you can say that you can suggest that yes, definitely we cannot ignore the Malthus from this perspective. So what are some of the interesting points? The very first interesting point is, it was the Malthus only who has brought this demography discussion in the economic aspect or welfare of the humans. So the theory building of the population starts with the Malthus itself. In fact, it was the Malthus idea which has sensitized the different governments of the world. Different countries got sensitized. They have started thinking that yes, what Malthus is saying, if it is going to be correct, so it is not good for the country in the future. And in fact, within the backdrop of Malthus only, the countries have started formulating population policies. Most of the population policies of the world has been framed, and in most of the population policy you will find their immediate target was to control the population growth. Why they are controlling? तो अगर पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ को कंट्रोल करने के लिए कोई पॉलिसी बन रही है, तो बिल्कुल से हम कह सकते हैं कि केवल और केवल इसीलिए बन रही थी, इट इज सिंपली बिकॉज ऑफ द माल्थूस ओनली. तो माल्थूस ने एक आइडिया प्रोपोगेट किया, और वो आइडिया हैज बीन बाइड बाय द डिफरेंट प्रोपोनेंट, and they thought that yes, Malthus is correct. If we will not contain the population, obviously our growth will get hampered. So population policies. Then when you will start looking out some of the contemporary things like COVID. So when you will start looking out the COVID, so what will happen? तो जो COVID-19 है, because Malthus is suggesting what? Pestilence. So Malthus is suggesting that there is a case of pestilence. Pestilence क्या है? epidemics. So Malthus was suggesting for the epidemics, and when you will look out the epidemics, so epidemics, he has suggested that yes, there can be epidemics. So in fact, when you will start looking out this COVID-19, then there is some sort of correlation. You can say that yes, this epidemics might be associated with a large scale population. Because of the large scale population, imagine if the population was lesser and people were interacting lesser, so obviously there was a possibility that might be that effect was very much limited to one particular area, but the effect has disseminated throughout the world. So mainly it is because of the high population. So you can give some credit that Malthus have in fact predicted this so early. He has predicted so early, and in fact, in most of the centuries, there will be some form of the pestilence. Earlier, it was thought that the pestilence will only happen in the past, because at that time period, the societies was not having well developed healthcare system. तो ऐसा सोचा गया कि पहले का हमारा हेल्थ केयर सिस्टम अच्छा नहीं था, और हेल्थ केयर सिस्टम अच्छा नहीं था तो इसलिए हमारा एपिडेमिक्स आते थे. बट अभी का जो आपका एपिडेमिक्स है, व्हेन यू विल लुक आउट द एपिडेमिक्स, तो जो अभी का आपका एपिडेमिक्स है, that particular epidemics is showing that in fact in 21st century also, there is a possibility that the epidemics can happen. So within that backdrop, you can consider that the idea of Malthus is going to be very much relevant. तो कुछ पॉइंट, कुछ क्रेडिट हम लोग दे सकते हैं कि नहीं, इस क्रेडिट में, इस पार्ट में Malthus appears to be little bit correct. तो Malthus थोड़ा बहुत एप्लीकेबल लगते हैं, थोड़ा बहुत रेलिवेंट लगते हैं फ्रॉम दिस पर्टिकुलर पर्सपेक्टिव. बट ओवरऑल वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट माल्थस आइडिया वाज नॉट दैट मच करेक्ट. उनकी थ्योरी को हम लोगों ने रिजेक्ट कर दिया था, लेकिन कुछ क्रेडिट तो देना बनता है, क्योंकि उन्हीं के थ्योरी के बाद ही जो कंट्रीज हैव स्टार्ट. इन फैक्ट इफ विल स्टार्ट लुकिंग आउट द कंट्रीज लाइक इंडिया एंड चाइना, सो इंडिया वाज वेरी फर्स्ट टू फॉर्मुलेट द पॉपुलेशन पॉलिसी इन द एंटायर एशिया. तो इंडिया की जो पॉपुलेशन पॉलिसी वो बहुत अर्ली है. इतनी अर्ली जो हमारी पॉपुलेशन पॉलिसी थी वो क्यों थी? बिकॉज वेरी अर्ली वी हैव थॉट दैट इफ वी आर नॉट एबल टू कंटेन दिस पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ, ऑब्वियसली इट विल हैम्पर आवर ओवरऑल डेवलपमेंट, इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ. सो दैट इज द आइडिया ऑफ द Malthus. Now the next theory of the population is of Karl Marx. Interesting part is Malthus has given specifically the population theory. So Malthus have written an essay, and in that essay he has highlighted his population theory. But Karl Marx was not writing about the population theory. Karl Marx was mainly writing about his communist manifesto. So he was just criticizing the capitalism, and in this criticism of the capitalism and the promotion of the communism, he has given an idea. He has tried to link the population or demographic pattern, and that is how we considered that yes, Karl Marx has also given some idea related to the population. तो अगर हम देखेंगे जो बाकी हमारे कॉन्सेप्ट हैं, डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन थ्योरी और माल्थूस की थ्योरी, these are the specialized demographic theory. Karl Marx has only given the idea. In fact, that is also the reason why in last few years, in fact in last 10 years you will find the questions are not directly being asked related to the Karl Marx. तो उनसे डायरेक्ट क्वेश्चन नहीं पूछा जा रहा, but still you should have some idea. What was the idea of the Karl Marx? Karl Marx has treated this population growth entirely with the economic aspect. Like Malthus theory is said to be a demographic theory, but Karl Marx was only looking from the perspective of economy, economist only perspective. Now, what he is saying that in the society there will be rich and poor, and rich and poor. Rich will have means of survival, so they will have mostly they are having everything, they are controlling each and everything, whereas the poor is not having the means of they are only having one of the means, and that is their hand, labor. So means they are the owner, whereas they are the labor. ये आपके ओनर हैं और ये आपके लेबर हैं. अब ये जो ओनर हैं और ये जो आपके लेबर हैं, ओनर और लेबर, इनका जो रिलेशन है उसमें क्या होगा कि आपका जो ओवर द पीरियड ऑफ टाइम दे आर हैविंग प्रॉफिट, सो ऑल द प्रॉफिट्स विल बी टेकन बाय द ओनर्स. दे विल always prefer to go for the cheap labor. In fact, this profit will not be distributed. So, means of production will be controlled. He has suggested the haves and have-nots. So, means of production is being controlled by the rich class. Rich class will earn the profit, and in this earning the profit, they will devise the methodology mechanism where they will pay very less. So cheap labor they will prefer. Wage rate will be lesser. Now the wage rate is lesser, and the industrialists, the capitalists, they are earning. अब ये जो profit earn हुई, इसको industrialist is not going to distribute among the labor. Karl Marx का idea है. Rather, what he is saying that the industrialists will invest within the industry. अब अगर जो प्रॉफिट आ रहा है वो प्रॉफिट आपकी वेज रेट में नहीं कन्वर्ट हो रहा है, laborers are not getting paid, so what this laborer will do, because laborers requirement is there, they need to manage the family, so what they will do is they will simply go for more hands or more number. So more hand or more number. इस तरीके से आपका वो चाहेंगे कि हमारे फैमिली थोड़ी बड़ी हो जाए, और अगर आपकी फैमिली बड़ी हो जाएगी तो पॉपुलेशन थोड़ा इनकम बढ़ जाएगी. तो द ओनली वे आउट टू इंक्रीज द इनकम फॉर द लेबरर्स, फॉर द पुअर, इज टू हैव मोर फैमिली. And in fact, they fail to understand that if you will have more number of labor means there is a high supply. सप्लाई तो आपने बढ़ा दी, और किसी चीज की अगर आपकी सप्लाई बढ़ गई तो उसकी डिमांड और कम हो जाएगी. तो यहां पे जो रेट है आपका, जो वेज रेट मिल रहा है लेबर को, क्योंकि अब और लेबर आ गए मार्केट में. ये उसी तरीके से कभी किसी आप मोस्ट ऑफ द सिटीज यू विल फाइंड, स्पेसिफिकली इन अर्बन एरिया, in most of the cities you will find there will be some of the common ground where large number of laborers are coming. When you will go in that area, then you will find, just go and just try to analyze, just try to stay there and try to look out the pattern. You will find more than majority of the laborers are not getting the right payment. In fact, let's suppose that initially in the morning, if they are looking for 1500 rupees for the whole day, and let's suppose after 1 hour they are not getting any work, they will say, okay, all right, I am ready to work in 1200. Or in fact, if someone is very in need of money, so they will be ready to go for the 1800. Why it is happening? It is simply happening because when you will have the demand. And consider the another scenario. Let's suppose on that particular place, every day 1000 laborers were coming and there were demand of 600-700, but suddenly 500 laborers has gone somewhere, so now you will have only 500 laborers and demand is 600. So definitely there will be some of the mismatch, And if that mismatch will be there, obviously they will be get paid. In fact, this is mostly happening in domestic helps. In domestic help throughout the country, you will find, especially in urban areas, wherever you will have the higher demand. So higher demand and lesser supply, wage rate will be higher. But where the supply is higher and demand is lesser, so obviously wage rate will go down. तो जो कार्ल मार्क्स का आइडिया है, कार्ल मार्क्स का आइडिया सिंपली है कि ये जो प्रॉब्लम क्रिएट हुई है पॉपुलेशन की, दिस प्रॉब्लम ऑफ द पॉपुलेशन इज एसोसिएटेड विद द ओनली capitalism. Now what he is suggesting, that because you will have more and more labor and there will be lesser wage rate, and because of that in the society what will happen, problem like disease, misery, famine. So all the problem that is prevailing in the society is very much associated, all the problems in the society is very much associated with the high population growth. High population growth. And why this high population? In fact, one more thing. If we'll start looking out that if the population is growing rapidly, so this population growth might be associated with the rich also. But what Karl Marx is suggesting, to a certain extent you can say it is not incorrect completely. Karl Marx is suggesting that over the period of time, the capitalist class, the rich people, the haves, they will understand that if they will have more number of children, they need to distribute the resources. Whereas they have been accustomed to the luxurious life. So the way of life they are living, they have been accustomed, they need more money, and because of that, they are very conscious to have more number of babies. Because of that, the rich class will have a lesser children. And to a certain extent, it is not incorrect. Throughout the world, you will find, mostly in the urban societies, mostly in the urban areas, the number of children are lesser in comparison to the rural areas. Why it's so? Because in rural area, you will have a more easy availability of the food. When you will have the easy availability of the food and other things are not that much required, so the cost of living is comparatively low. Of course, there will be some problem of the fooding, there will be some problem of the healthcare facilities, problem of education. So healthcare facilities and education problem is there in the rural areas also. But in rural area, the cost of living is comparatively low in comparison to the urban area. And in fact, social securities are well developed in the rural areas. अगर आप अपनी कंट्री की बात करें तो यहाँ पे जो सोशल सिक्योरिटी के जो मीन्स हैं वो ज्यादा बेहतर तरीके से डेवलप हैं आपके रूरल एरियाज में. Whereas in urban area, there is a more societal pressure, higher cost of living. Because of that, in the urban area, you will find, within the urban also you will have a rich and poor. But within the urban area, you will find that the population growth is comparatively low. Now, his idea, the Karl Marx theory of the population, is not very much correct because he was not having some rational suggestion how to control the population or what should be done, because he was only one thing in his mind, and that was the criticism of the capitalism. तो उनका ये था कि केवल कैपिटलिज्म को क्रिटिसाइज करना है. एंड इन फैक्ट व्हाट ही वाज सजेस्टिंग दैट दिस चेंज दिस कैपिटलिज्म टू द communism and most of the problem of the population will go. Most of the problem of this misery, disease, famine, all these problems will be gone. But he failed to understand and he failed to realize that this problem is also prevalent in those societies or those countries that are having the communist kind of setup. The classical example was the China. China was having the problem, and in fact China's population problem has not been sorted out through the communism. It has been sorted out through their one child policy. So China में आपकी population became so problematic that they need to come out with a single child policy. तो जब उन्होंने single child policy लेके आए, then only that problem of the population has been sorted out. So we cannot say that Karl Marx idea is very valid. Now we'll move to the last major concept of the population, and to certain extent is also correct, that is demographic transition theory. But before that, let's try to understand, as far as the population is concerned, or population growth is concerned, there are three important determinants of the population growth. So when we look out the population growth, there are three determinants. One is fertility, another one is a mortality. Fertility is also being referred as birth rate. Mortality is death rate. So fertility is birth rate, mortality is death rate. There is a third component, and the third component is the migration. तो third component जो हमारा है वो है migration. So in fact, the two theories that has been, one is given as a population theory, another one has discussed the population while writing about the Communist Manifesto, has not included any of these elements determinant. When the third theory have been propagated, that is demographic transition theory, included two of the important determinant of the population. One is the birth rate and death rate. तो ये जो थ्योरी है आपकी, दिस थ्योरी हैज बीन प्रोपोगेटेड ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ बर्थ रेट, डेथ रेट. ऑफ कोर्स उसके भी क्रिटिसिज्म में आप कह सकते हैं कि उसने माइग्रेशन को नहीं इंक्लूड किया, बट दैट इज अ डिफरेंट इशू. बट मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग इज दैट इट हैज इंक्लूडेड two important determinants of the population growth, that is fertility and mortality. Demographic transition theory, DTT. Demographic transition theory, that is DTT. Now this demographic transition theory जो आपकी ये DTT है, it has been given by the W.S. Thompson in 1929 and then W. Nottestein, that is 1945. So W.S. Thompson 1929, W. Nottestein, that is 1945. So they have given this theory, and this theory is primarily associated with the three important basic premises. So this theory has been propagated based on the three premises. कौन सी three important premises है, assumption है, उसको समझ लीजिए पहले. The first basic premise on which this theory has been propagated is, in any society, first death rate will decline. So this theory start from the, कहां से शुरू हो रही है उसको भी समझिए. ये जो theory start हो रही है, it is starting from rural agrarian high death rate and high birth rate. ठीक है, तो it is starting from the rural agrarian society having high death rate to high birth rate. अब ये जो high death rate है, high birth rate है, ये आपका ट्रांसफॉर्म होगा. और ट्रांसफॉर्म कैसे होगा? It will transform into the urbanized areas, और urbanized area में क्या होगा? There will be low death rate and low birth rate. So low death rate and low birth rate. So high death rate, high birth rate से start होके it will go for the low death rate and the low birth rate. So it will go from here to here. अब ये किस तरीके से, how it will proceed, try to understand. How it will proceeded from high birth rate, high death rate to the low birth rate and low death rate. The very first premise, very first notion is, first death rate will decline first. So first क्या decline करेगा? Death rate. So death rate will decline first. Then what will happen? Later on, birth rate will decline to match the death rate. So death rate will come, death rate will go first. So declining of the death rate will go first. Later on, birth rate will also decline, and more or less it will try to match the death rate. That is how it will go. तो जो आपका starting हो रहा है, starting is happening from high birth rate, high death rate. But in this high birth rate and high death rate is not declining first. First decline is of death rate will go down, and when the death rate will go down, later on birth rate will also go down, and when the birth rate will go down, so there will be match. And there is another assumption premise that population passes through some transition. Population passes through some transition, and this transition is known as demographic transition. Demographic transition is also associated with a socio-economic transition. Means if demographic transition is there, socio-economic development will happen. So the society where the birth rate, death rate is high will be different from the society where the birth rate and death rate is low. That is what this theory is all about. तो थ्योरी का कहना है कि अगर आपके पॉपुलेशन में चेंज होगा, डेमोग्राफी में चेंज होगा, तो सोशल एस्पेक्ट, इकोनॉमिक एस्पेक्ट जो आपकी सोसाइटी है उसमें भी होगा. सो डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन is also associated with socio-economic development. So demographic transition is also associated with the socio-economic development. So within this backdrop, this theory, this concept has been given by Thompson and Nottestein. In fact, this transition has also been prepared for the India. Population is going to be the important topic because when it comes to the Indian census, so after every 10 years, starting from 1872, the first census has taken place in 1872, then the next census was in 1881. 1872 census was very much limited to the only British India. It has not included the princely state. And when it has been included in the princely state, then the first time census has taken place in 1881. So officially it was second, but for the whole India it was the first. Since 1881, after every 10 years in India, census has conducted. But in 2021, when the census was supposed to be, there was a COVID-19, the global pandemic. Because of the global pandemic, the census has been delayed. And when the census has been delayed, so there has been some other issues, boundary, delimitation of the different areas, district, demarcation of the parliamentary seat. So the government have tried to take out the opportunity from that perspective, and also they try to shift this paper-based census to the paperless census. And finally, it has been decided that the census will start, and we are expecting that by next year the census will get conducted. So from that perspective also, you need to understand that census related population related discussion, population related concepts are going to be very important in this year's mains examination. ठीक है, तो इंडिया के भी लिए ये प्रिपेयर किया जाता है डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन थ्योरी. नाउ दिस डेमोग्राफिक ट्रांजिशन थ्योरी हैज बीन प्रेजेंटेड इन द फॉर्म ऑफ ग्राफ. तो एक ग्राफिकल प्रेजेंटेशन है. हाउ दिस ग्राफ इज बीइंग प्रेजेंटेड. दिस पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ जो सीक्वेंस है, इट इज बीइंग प्रेजेंटेड इन डिफरेंट स्टेजेस. Initially, the birth rate was very high. Whereas the death rate was also very high. And the overall population so the stage 1 is being referred as high stationary. High stationary. Stage 2 is early expanding stage. Then late expanding stage, and then low stationary stage. So the population growth, some of the scholars have tried to divide it even in 5 categorization. Try to understand. This line is showing population growth. This line is showing birth rate. This line is showing the death rate. Now, if you can see in this first stage, you will find, here I am writing, birth rate is very high. I will use the other color. Birth rate is very high and so the death rate. So जो ये आपका first stage है, in this first stage, that is high stationary stage, birth rate is very high, death rate is very high. This is the rural agrarian society. The technological know-how is not there, medical facilities are not there. People are very much in believing of the customs, social norms are very rigid. So it is a kind of rigid society where you will have the birth rate is high, death rate is high. Like in India's demographic history, you can think of India in between 1901 to 1921. So at the starting of the 20th century, India's population was around 23 crores. So India's population was around 23 crores. और वहीं पे हम लोग birth rate, death rate was very high. There was a very prevalent, almost birth rate and death rate was both of these were between that 40 to 50. So 40 to 50 birth rate per thousand, 46, 47. Then the death rate is also around 40 to 44. And the life expectancy was hardly more than 39 years. So think of the life expectancy in that time period, because presently the life expectancy have reached to 73 years. Life expectancy of 73 years means large number of people must be living more than 73. Then only the average age is this. Whereas in 39, average age definitely is going to be very low, and large number of people were dying very early. So that is your birth rate is very high, death rate is very high. Now comes the next stage, and in the next stage, you just need to recall the basic assumption of this theory. So basic assumption, जो पहला assumption है, that assumption says that death rate will first come, death rate declining. So here comes the declining of death rate. Birth rate is still very high, death rate has started declining. अब यहां पे समझिए कि जो डेथ रेट डिक्लाइन किया, व्हाई दिस डेथ रेट हैज डिक्लाइन. So this death rate has started declining mainly because of increase in death rate has started declining mainly because of increase in food availability, agricultural advancement. तो agricultural advancement हो रहा, food availability बढ़ रही है. Because of this, what will happen? People are having a food. And when they are having the nutrition, when they are having the food, so there are high chances that they will survive. In fact, at the same time, तो food की availability बढ़ी, agriculture आपकी अच्छी perform करने लगी, famine की जो problem थी वो sort out हुई, उसके साथ में there has been some of the improvement in the healthcare facilities. तो जो आपका diseases थे, epidemics थे, उससे भी थोड़ा टैकल किया गया. There has been a good improvement in the sanitation. Like in India, अगर आप देखेंगे, इसी को अगर हम इंडिया से भी कंपेयर करें, तो इंडिया was in the first stage between 1901 to 1921. And 1921 से 1951 तक India is like in this stage. Now in that stage you will find, and in fact India has extended that stage, तो इंडिया का जो स्टेज है वो और आगे तक चला गया. तो आइडियली आपका अगर हम इस थ्योरी के हिसाब से देखें तो 1951 में इंडिया पहुंच जाना चाहिए था, बट इंडिया हैज रिमेन्ड इन दैट स्टेज फॉर वेरी क्वाइट लॉन्ग पीरियड ऑफ टाइम. इन फैक्ट इस स्टेज में इंडिया हैज रिमेन्ड टिल वेरी रिसेंटली लाइक 2011. तो दैट इज वन ऑफ द क्रिटिसिज्म दैट it is not very much applicable for the some of the developing countries. तो developing countries के लिए उतना relevant नहीं है model, but anyway, if you will start looking out the India after 1921, because the Gandhiji have entered in the active politics in Indian politics late 1910, so 16-17 से आप देखेंगे कि involvement हुआ, और गांधी जी का most of the time you will look out the Gandhiji from the perspective of his political movement. But other than the political movement, he was also participating and he was propagating, he was making people aware related to the social improvement, some of the movements. And in that social movement, sanitation improvement was very important aspect. In fact, after this Pune plague, the Gandhiji have actively convinced the people to look out this sanitation. So there was a sensitization. People got sensitized through different movement, different personalities, and at the same time there has been some of the improvement in the healthcare facility. So combinedly, this healthcare improvement, agricultural improvement, good availability of the food supply, everything will ultimately result in death rate. तो अब यहां पे देखिए, जो पहला आपका स्टेज है वहां पे बर्थ रेट बहुत हाई है, डेथ रेट बहुत हाई. इट इज लाइक everyone is having more than 15 children. So people are having more than 15 16 children. So when people are having 15 16 children, so there is a possibility that the population will become very high. But the population is not that much high. Why? There are 15 16 children, but there has been a large number of children are dying. So death rate is also very high. So there will be balance. And in fact, population is very much stagnant. इसीलिए यहां पर करें हाई स्टेशनरी, हाईली स्टैग्नेंट पॉपुलेशन. बट नाउ व्हाट विल हैपन इन द सेकंड स्टेज? बर्थ रेट अभी भी ज्यादा है, बर्थ रेट इज स्टिल वेरी हाई, डेथ रेट सडनली नीचे आ गई. सो इमेजिन अ सिचुएशन, अर्लियर अराउंड एवरीवन वाज हैविंग अ 10 चिल्ड्रन and out of the 10 children hardly 2-3 children was surviving, 6-7 children were dying. So the population was mostly stabilized. But suddenly, people are still having the 10 children, but now the chances of the survival has gone up. So out of the 10 children, 8 children are surviving. So earlier it was only 2-3 children surviving. Now we'll have 8 children are surviving, means there will be sudden population rise. So in this stage, there will be a very high population rise. तो ये आपकी जो स्टेज होगी, यहाँ पर जो population की growth है, that is very high. So population growth will be very high in this stage. Now the population growth is very high and societies are also transforming. There is a question that why still the population, so from here, now next we'll move to the next stage, that is late expanding. Now in this late expanding, death rate has almost settled down. Medical facilities have evolved. Industrial revolution has emerged. तो यहाँ पे industries का भी बहुत penetration हो गया है. Then you will have a death rate has completely evolved. Life expectancy have increased very high. But still, the birth rate is not declining. Birth rate has started declining. तो जो दूसरा premise था वो आ गया है कि birth rate will also start declining and it will try to match. वो यहां पे आया है. But still birth rate is not exactly the same as death rate. Why so? Now here comes some of the role of experience, because still the majority of the people are not very much convinced that we should have a very less number of children. तो जो पुराना hangover है, there was a 2 world wars. And in World War, large number of people have died. And in most of the families, there was a prevalence. Like, अगर आप Indian case देखेंगे, तो in Indian case, after the independence, population has not started declining immediately, whereas the death rate has settled. Death rate has declined very rapidly. But still population was not declining, mainly because people were having, there are 2-3 combination. तो पहला तो ये है कि people was having hangover, and when the people was having hangover, that earlier war, diseases, pandemic, तो एक तो वो रीजन था. बट थोड़े समय बाद वो रीजन आपका सबसाइड करने लगा. अब वो रीजन सबसाइड करने लगा तो क्योंकि आपकी कंट्री गॉट इंडिपेंडेंस, सो देयर हैज बीन अ ग्रेट अपॉर्चुनिटीज इन ऑलमोस्ट एवरी सेक्टर. तो एम्प्लॉयमेंट की थोड़ी सी अपॉर्चुनिटी बन गई. बट मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द कंट्री वाज स्टिल एग्रेरियन कंट्री. Agrarian country means they require large number of people to manage the agriculture. तो एक मॉडल आया कि जहां पे still they require, earlier large number of families was because large number of children was not surviving. So earlier they were like 10 children and out of 10 children only 3 will survive. But now survival rate gone up, but still they require 10 children. Why? Because it is like that 3 children will work in the agricultural field, 3 children will go to the governments or in army or in defense or in urban areas, and they will earn the money. So the system was developed in that manner. The system was developed in that manner where it was like that the population, the birth rate is still very high. Population was still very high in this particular phase. तो ये जो phase है, इसमें भी अभी आपकी population बहुत ज्यादा, बर्थ रेट ज्यादा है, तो पॉपुलेशन का ग्रोथ होगा. बट इंटरेस्टिंग पॉइंट, Here the population was growing very rapidly. Now the population is initially growing, but more or less it will start settling. And in some of the cases, it will start declining also. So अगर हम इसे 5 पार्ट में डिवाइड करें, 5 फेज में, तो ये आपका यहाँ पे लो स्टेशनरी होगा एंड देन डिक्लाइनिंग पॉपुलेशन. बट बिकॉज वी आर showing in only 4 stages, so what will happen, here comes there is a declining of the population. ये जो population declining है, it is mainly associated with some of the highly developed societies. So in highly developed societies, अब यहाँ पे क्या होगा, आपका birth rate is still very high, death rate is gone down. Here low birth rate, low death rate. अब आपकी जो लो बर्थ रेट है, लो डेथ रेट है, उसकी वजह से पॉपुलेशन डिक्लाइन कर गई. यहां पे आपका हाई बर्थ रेट, लो डेथ रेट है. अब यहां पे पॉपुलेशन आपकी डिक्लाइन कर रही. सो वी आर विटनेसिंग द नेगेटिव पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ. एंड इन फैक्ट दिस पेज इज ऑल्सो वेरी मच एसोसिएटेड विद द सो कॉल्ड डेमोग्राफिक विंटर. तो जो हमारा डेमोग्राफिक विंटर का मामला है, व्हाट इज दिस डेमोग्राफिक विंटर? दिस डेमोग्राफिक विंटर इज प्राइमरली एसोसिएटेड व्हेन द पॉपुलेशन इज नॉट राइजिंग. लाइक मोस्ट ऑफ द Scandinavian country like Japan, where the population life expectancy is very high, but the people are not going to have more than one children. China has gone for the single child policy, but the highly developed societies, they have not gone for very large number of people. Why they have not gone for the large number of people? Because of the people are very much career oriented. People want to have luxurious life. So when the people wants to have a luxurious life and they just want to have a more preference to the career, both male and female is working and the cost of living is very high. Within that backdrop, the people, the societies will not prefer more number of children and birth rate will go highly down. And in fact, when the birth rate will go down and it will falls below replacement level, so in that societies there is a less population, that there is less chances that the population will grow, and most of these societies will suffer. In Scandinavian countries, in the country like Japan, there is a problem of population. Most of the governments are trying to encourage the people to have more number of children. Like this, most of the policies related to the maternity leaves, these evolved from those countries only, where they were trying to induce the people to go for the more number of babies. The classic case is emerging is China. Like China, in the 1970s, they have adopted the single child policy. So when the China has adopted the single child policy, they have adopted the single child policy because they thought that the population growth is hindering their economic growth, and to have a steady economic growth, they need to tackle the population growth, and they have gone for the single child policy. Single child policy has been also accompanied with more penetration of education, more participation of the female in the work. Now the female participation in the work has gone up, and when female is also working, male is also working, the cost of living has gone up. So they are not having much time for the family. And in the 21st century, the China have realized that their population growth is just mostly stabilizing, or it is also showing some declining trend, and this declining trend is not good, because demographic dividend is a very important tool for the economic growth, and the India was giving a very good competition. So China has started promoting that the people can have more than one children. So they have started giving the relaxation, but the people are not looking for that relaxation. In fact, some sort of this characteristic is also visible in urban areas of our country. Obviously, in our country, we do not have much problem of that overall population growth. हमारी जो population growth की problem है, that is primarily associated with some of the southern state. So in some of the southern state, we have the problem of the population where the most of the states TFR, total fertility rate, has gone very low. Total fertility rate is simply the expected number of children a female can have in their fertility period. तो ये जो total fertility rate है आपका, it should be 2.1. तो 2.1 is calculative of course. Fraction में children नहीं होंगे, तो you should not get confused. So, but this 2.1 is considered as the below replacement level. तो अगर आपकी total fertility rate इससे नीचे जाती है, तो it is considered that it has gone below replacement level, and then the problem start occurring. It is a serious concern for the population rise because human resource are very important. एक और कंसर्न इसके साथ आता है कि जब भी किसी सोसाइटी में, लाइक मोस्ट ऑफ द सोसाइटीज वेयर वी हैव दिस प्रॉब्लम ऑफ डेमोग्राफिक विंटर, ये जो डेमोग्राफिक विंटर है जहां पे पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ आपका बहुत रैपिड नहीं हो रहा है, लो बर्थ रेट है, लो डेथ रेट है, गवर्नमेंट इज गिविंग सो मच कंसेशन, लाइक some of the Scandinavian countries are encouraging the people, enticing the people, if you will have more number of children, more than the 2 children, the entire lifetime your taxes will be completely waived off. But still the people are not having the more number of children because they are considering that this having the babies is liability. And in fact, openly there was one Indian entrepreneur which has done very well, and one of the billionaire, he has openly said that the children are liability. तो जो हमारी new generation है या societies that are the people that are very much well accustomed to luxury, wealthy class, their thought process is like that. So they are preferring to less number of children, but over the period of time that is not good. तो जो आपका पूरा का पूरा हमारा डेमोग्राफिक डिपेंडेंट है, जिस तरीके से हमारा इकोनॉमिक मॉडल है country like India, it is also not good. The second problem, low birth rate, low death rate will have another problem, that is demographic winter. Fine, population नहीं बढ़ रही है, लेबर की प्रॉब्लम जो आपकी आएगी कि लेबर की शॉर्टेज होगी and all those problems, that is fine. But along with this stage also brings another dimension, another problem, and that problem is of the problem of population aging. More aged people will be prevalent, and if you will have more number of aged people, so there will be other problems. क्योंकि जो हमारे aged people हैं उनकी और problems होगी सोसाइटी में. So there is a problem like social security problem होगी, health care हमारा already our health care system is a burden country like India, और अगर उसमें more number of people are the aged people, so think about that, what will happen. So there are lots of problem challenges related to this low birth rate and low death rate. For the India, we are not having this problem of the low birth rate, low death rate in entire country. This problem is mainly prevalent in the southern state, some of the western state. तो जो हमारे कुछ western state है, southern state है, वहां पे ये problem ज्यादा है. सेंट्रल इंडिया, कुछ नॉर्थ ईस्टर्न में भी स्टेट है, बट सेंट्रल इंडिया एंड ईस्टर्न इंडिया, नॉर्दर्न इंडिया, दिस प्रॉब्लम इज नॉट देयर. In fact, the states like UP, Bihar, West Bengal, here we have still the problem because still we are in that stage of third stage. Birth rate is still very high and death rate is low. So this is all about the population theory, that is demographic transition theory. So the transition will start from agrarian rural society to here you will have the highly developed society. So this is a stage where we have a highly developed urbanized society. Now we'll quickly look out some of the criticism. The very first criticism of this theory is positives बहुत हैं. So there are lots of positive because this was the first time that the demographic theory have tried to link the demographic transition and the socio-economic transition. And to certain extent it is also valid to some of the countries. तो इस तरीके का कुछ आप पॉजिटिव्स हैं, जितने भी हम लोगों ने डिस्कस किए सारे पॉजिटिव्स हैं. पहला जो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट क्रिटिसिज्म है that it has not included the third determinant of the population, that is migration. The second criticism is it is not that every time the society will follow this transition. So every time the transition is not going to be fixed. Like in case of India, अगर आप इंडिया को देखें, so in case of India you will find that we have moved to the service based economy. तो हम लोग सर्विस बेस्ड इकोनॉमी में 90s में ही पहुंच गए, लेकिन हम लोगों का जो ये स्टेज आया ये बहुत लेट आया. तो थर्ड स्टेज दैट वाज सपोज्ड टू बी इन द 90s have been witnessed almost in 2011 and after, and in fact that will become clear when we will have the next census data. फिर कुछ आपकी कंट्रीज हैं, like in some of the countries you will find the population is stabilized forcefully. तो पॉपुलेशन आपकी स्टेबलाइज्ड हो गई फोर्सफुली. इनफैक्ट कुछ सोसाइटीज में आप देखेंगे कि पॉपुलेशन इज स्टिल वेरी हाई और बर्थ रेट इज स्टिल वेरी हाई, बट दे हैव अचीव्ड द इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट. खास करके जो हमारी वेस्टर्न एशियन कंट्री है, तो वेस्टर्न एशियन कंट्री में आपकी जो बर्थ रेट है स्टिल वेरी हाई, बट दे हैव रीच्ड टू दैट स्टेज ऑफ हाईली डेवलप्ड countries, highly developed. So it is not that every society or everywhere this model is valid. In fact, you can say that this model is more valid in the developed countries in comparison to the developing country. So these are some of the important aspects. There is one more concept, that is the optimum population theory. Optimum population theory is not a demographic theory. Basically, it's an economic theory. It has been given by the Cannon, Professor Cannon, and it has been popularized by some of the proponents like Dalton. And it is simply suggests that how the population and wealth is associated. तो एक मॉडल है कि पॉपुलेशन और वेल्थ कैसे एसोसिएटेड है. कुछ एरियाज में, कुछ कंट्रीज में रिसोर्सेज ज्यादा है, पॉपुलेशन कम है, तो दैट इज अंडर पॉपुलेशन. कुछ एरियाज में रिसोर्सेज अगर आपके ज्यादा है और पॉपुलेशन कम है तो अंडर पॉपुलेशन. रिसोर्सेज अगर कम है, पॉपुलेशन ज्यादा है तो ओवर पॉपुलेशन. सो अंडर पॉपुलेशन, ओवर पॉपुलेशन, when there is a match of resource and the population, then that will be the optimum population. So it's a theoretical concept only, because we are not having any tool to devise that yes, this is the right number of people. Because when we are considering that this is the only people, in that case we should have the complete idea that this is the only resource that we have. And resources are not, the very famous idea of the Zimmerman, resources are not, they become. So the nature of the resources will change. So might be earlier we are not having the idea of having this hydrogen based fuel, lithium batteries, but now we are harnessing the energy from these. So the nature of the resources will change. So it's only theoretical concept, and it is very hard to calculate that what will be the optimum population. So these are some of the population theories, and within the backdrop of these population theory, you can solve most of the questions related to the population that will be asked in your paper 1 geography optional as well as paper 2. That is all from my side in this session. Thank you.